Okay, so we are here on IO 4B1 with Death Tacticus, Swakol, Evil Diablo, and Quarterus. Team D, Team A, Team C, Team B. We did talk briefly about this tile. It is going to be an important matchup between teams A and C. And we have a chem colony here, regular price chems, but we have high fuel to start, and we have double iron and steel. I still think everyone should probably found as a steel faction. Nomad's just not very good on IO, especially since there's no great silica in this game. So we should be expecting probably 4 elites, honestly. But maybe someone is feeling particularly brave. Robot also potentially doable. How is all the ice relative to the basalt? This is potentially very interesting. The double geo adjacent. This is also strong enough.
A robotics HQ
Carbon is a bit more scattered. Okay. Apparently I'm wrong about elite spam. This is a very strong robot spot, very good combo tiles there. Quarterus going for a bit of a weak scientific found. Doesn't have adjacent ice, only really is working with the iron. Could have just been better off dropping down here, for example, next to basalt and ice. Okay, so we have 2 robots and 1 elite. Well, DT's plan is just going to be ready to go into ion collectors on HQ2. Gonna just produce all his steel. It's gonna be a bit slow to get to his next HQ, but that should be fine. With his found, he is definitely foregoing silicon long term, just only getting iron and uranium from these 2 tiles, which should be okay still, but an interesting decision long term relative to something like just founding here. It is a bit of a faster start, doesn't have to pay the startup costs for the basalt platforms. These get online a bit faster. So there is all that going for him. Probably, yeah, looking to get into just really blazing fast start with these ion collectors and everything. But Swakol already also HQ2 also getting down ion collectors. They're going to be a lot more expensive for him because of DT's early carbon buy, but he should be just fine. I'm curious to see what else he's planning to do with his claims. I think there's a really strong argument for just picking up some carbon right away. Lots of money to be made quickly, and you want those claims eventually anyway. Other option is to sort of try to prepare for power. If that's your plan, you should be picking up this goon squad, especially with circuit overloads available. Moving into an extra steel mill instead, and 1 nuke plant. Okay. Still, really need to pick up that goon squad. DT is also just has the 1 nuke plant. It works nicely with his combo mines, getting that extra adjacency, but he's still only barely producing a surplus. Needs to get to HQ3, get that 2nd nuke plant down, or even move one of these mines into another nuke plant. It's a bit dicey since you lose. He'll be running an iron deficit, but the iron steel differential is big enough that he should be okay for a while. It's only going to be a 0.5 iron deficit.
Scientific HQ has been upgraded.
Although he will probably be in power for a while, so he's going to have to live with that for a while if he makes that choice. I think he's going to just go for the upgrade instead. All signs point to that. And that is indeed what happens. Should be seeing a 2nd nuke plant before long. Swakol foregoing the 2nd ion collector makes a lot of sense. It was expensive. DT was already heavily into that market. Going for that extra power makes worlds of sense. Let's take that upgrade pretty quickly. He doesn't have any cash though. Definitely something to watch out for generally. Don't want to always just upgrade immediately. Make sure you have the money to do stuff with your new claims. Otherwise you're just paying extra life support for no real reason. Getting that nice EMP will just delay things even longer for Swakol. Meanwhile, Quarterus has moved into triple steel, doing nice work for him. That aluminum being right there is going to be very helpful for him long term. Maybe a bit less so because Evil Diablo here has a lot of aluminum of his own, but still nice to have. The pair of ice not really getting a lot done, probably a bit of a mistake there with 2 robots on the board with very little water or glass production likely to happen very quickly. There's just not very much pressure onto oxygen. That's something that could have waited a bit. I do like to move into the geotherm. He has plenty of steel to support that. And geotherms are just pretty strong on Io now after the recent nuclear plant nerf. I would like to see the last claim go down onto this ice here. Give that water processor a friend. Not necessarily the best market to be in right now, but if you already have that 1 tile down, might as well. Instead, going to be moving into a farm remote from his base with no adjacency. This is something that Quarterus has done a bunch throughout this tournament. These are good markets to be in, but you can't get much done without committing more heavily into them. As a robot like DT, you can pull off something like this, make great use of this robot adjacency just to be in a lot of different markets, but also still be producing things effectively. DT has made a lot of power money at this point, and that's been keeping him in things. Moving into a patent lab now, queuing up nanotech immediately. Nanotech should be nice for him. It is still a bit of an interesting first choice, but should be fine. But even with all that, Evil Diablo is still solidly ahead based off of this combo tile start. It's always just going to be a very quick roll through things as a robot with those tiles. Or as even an expansive or, you know. Yeah, also doing a good job keeping his debt under control, getting into the power when he needed to. I don't know what his plan is now. Moving to some food will be useful, but there was something I was concerned about for Evil Diablo, and I can't quite remember what it was. So maybe it's not something to be all that concerned about. In any case, DT has been focusing all his fire onto Swakol, and I guess Evil Diablo also has been. Which makes a lot of sense. You want to keep this elite down.
A scientific HQ has been upgraded.
Yeah, so I think just a few small mistakes really adding up for Swakol here to keep him a bit farther behind. The instant upgrade to HQ3 interfered with his power money, then he just gets EMP'd and that drags him down further. Doesn't have any income for a while, and he's just been constantly hammered and hasn't had a good way to keep pushing forward through all this. Going to end up missing out on a lot of the steel money because DT and Evil Diablo have been making a lot of that instead, as well as Corderis. And he's just gonna have to work a bit harder to fight his way back into things here. I'm not sure I like the move into farms. Literally everyone is in farms at this point. Swakol, I guess, does have some water production, but you could pretty easily move into chems or something instead. Maybe even look to get into a pleasure dome adjacent to your base. Pleasure dome would be making not great income, I guess. Only 1 elite, 2 robot scientists, not much other entertainment demand. Well, regardless, DT has chosen to move into thinking machines as his second patent. An interesting combination of moves, nanotech and then thinking machines. I'm not quite sure what his plan is for thinking machines long term. Aluminum is fairly cheap now, but if you were planning to move into elevators, I would expect more buy-ins. And otherwise, it's protecting 7 tiles, which isn't bad, but again, I have to wonder about priorities a bit. You can do something like a superconductor, you can do something like liquid batteries. There are other options. Corderis had been making really nice progress off of this food triangle. He was the only one to really commit heavily into food. DT and Evil Diablo are only going to pairs, while Predaris went for the full triangle. That has run out of steam, of course, which isn't too surprising, with 2 robots and everyone in some food, and just never had enough water to sustain that. This has needed a friend for a long time. But still, Predaris in a great market in chems. I would like to see him try to supplement this with some fuel production in particular. Everyone just running a little bit light on fuel. Although I guess Evil Diablo has made some moves to correct that. Okay, so Pleasure Dome finally starting to come up. It's actually only $182, so I might have actually skipped it for the moment. An optimization center moving into heavy chems, and eventually into these electronics, because this colony has branched out into being electronics. Those moves should do a lot for Swakol. Move into ions is also quite nice. I do have to question a bit Evil Diablo's choice to go into these basalt platforms in particular. It makes some amount of sense. Glass and electronics in particular are valuable markets that he will want access to, but it also feels like a bit of a waste when you have these combo tile mines already adjacent to you. He's going to be wanting to run those for a while longer, just to build up that aluminum stockpile, be ready to move into elevators if he has to. And elevators are strong this game. This 42k launch on oxygen should be quite nice. Speaking of which, I still do not understand why no one has picked up liquid batteries. DT finally going for it now. When the off-world launch is oxygen, this needs to be a higher priority. One thing you can say, I guess, is that solar panels are less of a consideration for liquid batteries on IO. They are just another step weaker than they are in series, so just a bit harder to use. Okay.
An elite HQ has been upgraded.
That will be a useful nuke onto Diablo. But DT also doesn't have any sort of carbon surplus. Not building a stockpile, not really going to have access to additional carbon going forward. I have to wonder about plays to nuke carbon. They certainly do weaken Evil Diablo, but... And I guess there aren't really many other options for nukes on IO, so fair enough. Okay, DT starting the majority buy push onto Evil Diablo. Evil Diablo cannot defend himself at this moment, and that is unlikely to change. Evil Diablo probably being a little too greedy on this optimization center and patent lab. Can't really afford to do that. Could have cancelled some of those buildings, it wouldn't have made a difference. DT should be in control of this game at this point, though Swakol, again, always dangerous as an elite. I'm concerned that Swakol is going for patents instead of optimizations. Virtual reality will be doing a nice job for him, an additional $160 a second on this Pleasure Dome, because he's finally HQ5, finally getting some real entertainment demand there. But he really needs this optimization center running. He needs to get this chemical money going. He needs to get electronics money going. Otherwise, DT is just going to be in a strong position. Evil Diablo not going to be the best of subs, but he will do enough, and he's also certainly keeping DT's stock price afloat. DT also in the right optimizations, no big surprise there. Does Swakol have carbon? He has not picked up any carbon in this game. That is something he can fix once he gets some perfect optimizations under his belt, but he really probably wanted some now, and DT's not going to give him any time to build up. Exactly what you need to be doing against an elite. Meanwhile, Predaris has still just had this farm triangle. I mean, food has recovered a lot, and it should be a solid market now. He needs to, makes it sell, gets that auto supply back. But just overall, this was a bit of a weak scientific found. It was always going to be a bit hard to make this work well. This synthetic meat and this fourth farm are just supreme overkill. Again, with the 2 robots, there's not going to be enough demand for food to really justify running this, and it's really just going to make these prices even out very quickly. This 5th farm exacerbates things so much. What Cordaris needs to do, he needs to pick up some additional, well, he needs to pick up some carbon. DT did end up picking up a 2nd carbon quarry, which is just great for him. He's the only person in carbon right now, besides the sub, which, you know, doesn't really count because the sub's money is his money. But yeah, Cordaris just leaving himself not many options to go into other markets by the way he played this out. If he were adjacent to basalt, that makes glass a lot more viable, it makes electronics a bit more viable, it makes power a bit easier. It just makes everything a little bit easier, especially now that there's no building speed penalty on basalt. DT not far from the buy onto Swakol. Once he gets that, well, I mean, this game has been over, so saying that that will end the game is kind of misleading. Swakol moving into a single electronic style right here is interesting. I mean, there wasn't anything great he could have done with the tile instead. It used to be an optimization center. I think it would have been better, he would have been better served keeping it as an optimization center. Although, I mean, honestly, in this position, nothing you do matters. DT has the buy very shortly, and he'll have the game very shortly after that. DT making a bit of an error selling out of his stock immediately. Needs to be buying up this stock more heavily before doing the sellouts. He only has 4 stocks to sell out of at this point, which should net him about 240, somewhere around there. And he's going to need every bit of that if he wants to get this buy done immediately. But yeah.
The black market is online.
Just a very strong game by DT, taking advantage of this opening left by Evil Diablo, and just both players hammering Swakol so much that DT didn't even have to fear the late game elite. Well done all around. Still have to question the found a little bit. Didn't make a ton of sense to me, but it works. This could have been here. Again, maybe the little bit of extra speed does matter. It gets him into power sooner, and that power money was just really important for him. So, I guess it's fine. Perfect Electronics eventually doing great work, as Perfect Electronics will do for you. But that is definitely something to only look at later. Just a huge investment, and it takes a lot of time for this market to get to where you need it to be.